Greetings, this is a coronavirus COVID-19 update for 2/27/2020. So the first thing we look at every day is the Baidu numbers. These were finalized today really early before noon China time the next day. And the numbers we want to look at on here are the cumulative diagnosis, which includes the number above it and other diagnostic tests. So that's at 78,959 today, up 329 new cases from yesterday. And when you get into this Baidu link, and I'll put the link in the description below, you don't always see these change numbers, the delta numbers, the 329, because they're only posted, they spend all day finalizing these numbers, and then they post them, and then they have to reset them to 0 for the new day. So it's only up there for a few hours every day. Suspected cases, 2,308, that's up 452 from yesterday. Cumulative cures, which is not really a cure. China did not cure 36,000 people. Of this 36,000 people, probably 35,000 just recovered on their own. Why? Because the mortality rate's only 2%. The other 98% of the people that get coronavirus just have a flu for a few days and then they recover. Existing severe cases, that goes down every day, which is good. That's at 7,952. These would be intensive care unit, ICU patients from either a really bad pneumonia or some other organ failure, or a bad heart being affected by the virus. And then the deaths inside of China are at 2,791, up 44. 44 is a really low number. It's usually been hovering around 100. So that's a good sign too, if that's true. Then if you scroll down the same page, you'll see this map of China, which doesn't really change every day. The epicenter is that really dark province in the middle, Hubei province, where the city of Wuhan is located. Then they have two graphs if you keep scrolling down the same page. The first graph changed yesterday, so now they have diagnosed cases is the red line, and that's been going down. Suspected cases also going down, and they put recovered on here, or they put cured on here, which we call recovered, and that's been going up. So those are good things. And then they also added the number of deaths on the same page, and that's been hovering around 100 if you look to the left, and now it's at 40, 49, 44. There's a legend on the bottom. If you slide your cursor across the mouse across this page without pushing, without hitting enter, you'll see the new numbers. So this is for 2/27, the rightmost day, and you can see the number of cases on the bottom. And this is the second graph, and don't be misled by the heading, which says Africa. Apparently in Mandarin, Africa and the rest of the country are almost the same word. So that's what this means. It says nationwide, Hubei, and Africa. So if you look on the right, and we see 2/27, the current day, which indicates China got done really quick today. Non-Hubei province, 11 suspected cases, which is way down. Hubei province and the entire mainland China, 329, and Hubei, 318 new suspected and new confirmed cases. Suspected is in gold, and confirmed cases for Hubei province 318, confirmed for the whole country 329. Then if you scroll down further, you see a list of provinces, and that hasn't changed much from the day before. But outside of Hubei province, the number of deaths is usually around 3 or 4 or 5, and this is the top of the list. So we have a couple at 6, and the two alarming things here are Henan and Heilongjiang province, which is where the International Ice Festival takes place every year, and that's why that number is a little high. And that's in the city of Harbin, which is in Heilongjiang. I always say that wrong. And Henan province is a province in between, like Wuhan and going west, Chengdu, Panda Land. So Henan province is also a very highly populated province, and there were some prisons there that affected that number. So 20 and 13 are both really high numbers, which we'll see later. There's some places elsewhere in the world that have a much higher death rate. So that's alarming, what's happening in the rest of the world. Then if you keep scrolling down, the next thing you see on this Baidu site is Hot Search Today. So these are some stories I want to take a look at here, especially the first one, which is crazy, and the second one's kind of Chinese propaganda, and the third one, Iran. So we'll take a look at all three of these. So the first story, Beijing, who you remember, Beijing was really critical of the United States when we started canceling flights coming from Hubei and also monitoring the rest of the flights and putting severe restrictions on flights from all of China. So that happened on February 1st when the United States did that, and China said that that isn't very good of the United States to do that. So what does China do? China says, this is Beijing. Now Beijing has a city government for Beijing, and they also have, the national government. The Communist Party is based in Beijing also. So they announced today that people from Hubei, or Beijing citizens that are in Hubei, are not allowed to return to Beijing, even though they live there. So this is China telling their own Beijing people who happen to be stuck in Hubei with a lot of other people from a lot of other countries, you can't come home. So this is the country that criticized the United States. Then on the upper right, the second story is saying China will help, South Korea and Japan. China will also be present helping you. Well, they're helping so much that yesterday a flight from South Korea to China, all 163 people on board were slammed into isolation. And nobody knew that when they boarded the flight, that when they land, when they depart South Korea and land in China, they would be put in isolation for 2 weeks. Probably they wouldn't have gotten on the plane if they knew that. And then the third story, Iranian vice president tests positive for a new coronavirus. So everything's okay in Iran, just their health minister and a vice president are now, have now come down with coronavirus. But, nothing to be alarmed about. Then the next thing we take a look at every day is this Johns Hopkins global tracker. So what you saw before from Baidu is only China. All those numbers that we looked at previously is only China. And this is Johns Hopkins University. This is a research center. The name of the research center is the Center for Systems and Science Engineering. So I actually worked at a research center at Johns Hopkins before, but not this one. So these guys have been tracking this and doing a really good job of tracking it for a long time. This tracker here has changed over time. They've added these two columns on the right and the graph, and they're just doing a pretty good job of doing this. So right now we have a total confirmed at 83,342, and we'll take a little deeper dive into this. So the first thing I look at every day is Baidu's current number. So Baidu is saying that China has 78,959, and we are saying, Johns Hopkins is saying 78,824. So we're behind 100 there. So you can bump that the top number up 100 too. I just take a look at this. Sometimes it's different by several hundred, and sometimes, over 1,000 different. But today it's kind of mild. So the next thing I take a look at is the numbers from the day before and the numbers from today. Now, I usually don't have to look at the totals here. I can just glance at them, and I can see South Korea is at 2,000 cases, and I know that's a big increase from the day before. Same with Italy, and the same with Iran. So these are 3 hotspots outside of China now. And this one article here says, fueled by a trio of global hotspots. And then I looked for, other articles relating to all 3 of these. They're all over the internet, but I just chose 2 different ones today. So the Cornell Daily Sun, which would be Cornell University, they have the study abroad programs in Italy and South Korea were suspended. Now, I went to a study abroad program. I was an international student in graduate school, actually in undergraduate and graduate school. So these have been abandoned for Cornell University, and that's one of a zillion universities. USC, I picked their article yesterday. A lot of people are just calling their students home if they happen to be in China or in Italy or in South Korea. And that's been happening for a while now. So these are the 3 global hotspots: South Korea, Italy, and Iran. So I'll take a look at those individually next. This is South Korea, and this is the most alarming thing because they've got 2,000 cases now and things are kind of out of control there. So this is due mostly to a religious sect, a doomsday church, a Christian church, which is kind of like the Jones Christian Church. We don't know exactly what's going on there. It's a secretive sect, and they keep to themselves basically, and it's typical of any religious commune, religious sect like this. So this article, which is news today, say followers of the Doomsday Church were meeting in Wuhan until December. So that's the link that they have to Wuhan. Even though they're blaming everything on one 61-year-old woman who contracted coronavirus, she says that she didn't go to China. She's never been in China. But obviously people in this sect have been to Wuhan and they infected her. Now, how did that happen? Well, you can be a carrier and not have really severe symptoms or not have any symptoms and pass it on to someone else. So that 61-year-old woman is considered the super spreader, and she started by infecting people, like 40 people the first day. So there's also an article about this religious sect on the right where they say that this sect has 1,000 churches in South Korea and more than 240,000 members. So apparently, not many of those locations visited Wuhan, or we'd be in bigger numbers than that. So time will tell, what's going to happen here in the next few days is whether South Korea starts to get this under control, or maybe other cities with the same religious sect also went to Wuhan. That's yet to be seen. Then in Italy, what's happening in Italy, nobody really has traced, what happened to Italy first. Could be some people from Wuhan right before the Chinese New Year said, hey, let's go to the Alps and go skiing. And that's why the northern provinces here are hit the highest in Italy. But they haven't really tracked that down yet to anyone. But, it's making the news. They're going up every day. They went from 453 yesterday to 655 today. They also have some deaths that they're reporting. And this is the Italian minister, I guess prime minister, and he's showing people where the affected areas are, and he's also trying, saying that they're going to crack down on these people that are selling masks for 1,000 euros. I think that's probably a box of masks, but even, that's a very, very high number, and masks worldwide are going crazy, going low. I ordered set of masks to send to somebody to send to Wuhan, and plus I had a bunch of masks because I have a woodworking shop in the basement. So and they're N95 masks, all of them. So, but if you try to look for masks anywhere, you'll find in the United States a lot of people are out of masks, and that's on Amazon or Walmart or wherever you want to look. It's really hard to buy masks because China has bought them all up. And then there was a New Yorker article on the war zone, the quarantine zone, the red zone they call it also. So there is a war zone going on in the northern, where there's a complete lockdown. Roads are blocked, all trains and public transportation's blocked from getting in there. So they're under quarantine now, and Italy's fighting this just like China. They're just starting a little late. Then we have Iran, who's not fighting it at all. Time magazine down there, you see doctors inside Iran believe coronavirus is more serious than reported. Iran vice president, one of 7 officials to contract coronavirus. And here's what's going on, in the top article from the Atlantic, the government refused to impose quarantines and is encouraging people to visit the epicenter during the outbreak. Because this is a religious city here, and people go there in pilgrimages. And it says here, pilgrims from a dozen countries converge on one small city. They stay in cramped hotels using communal toilets and eating meals together. So, there's no quarantine going on at all there. And you see a couple ladies wearing a mask, and they're the only ones in this crowd. So things are not good in Iran. They're not responding well to this, and things might get much worse in Iran. And also the number being reported is probably really low because they're reporting 20 deaths now, and that the mortality rate is not 10%, it's 2%. So there could be a lot more deaths and a lot more confirmed cases in Iran. Nobody really knows, but it's what's going on in Iran right now is just an indication that things will get a lot worse. Encouraging people to go to the war zone, to the zone where it started, where Italy has locked down theirs and China has locked down theirs. In the U.S., not a whole lot of news here. We were at 16 cases just 4 or 5 days ago, and the reason it's at 60 now is because Americans from that cruise ship were repatriated back to the United States. And there's an article about a couple being separated there. The husband came down sick and was sharing his cabin with his wife, and they didn't do anything to quarantine him. Japan didn't. They came in and took his temperature a couple times, and that was about it. So really kind of a case where Americans are a little bit disappointed in the health care that they got from Japan. But also in the same article, they say that of all the countries in the world, these are a ranking. This is from USA Today. These are a ranking of the countries that are best outfitted to fight a pandemic, and the United States is number 1. So, that's encouraging, but, it's a big country, and, a pandemic means, hell all over the place. And, maybe the United States is in the best condition to fight a pandemic, but that doesn't mean it won't affect the U.S. And then the last thing we look at is this graph on the lower right side of the Johns Hopkins. You can click on the upper right corner of that graph, and it'll expand and get big. And this just shows you trends. We were, after Valentine's Day, kind of a less steep line than the previous days, and then it actually leveled off, and that's because China started going down, and now it's heading up again because of areas outside of China that are increasing. This is a global tracker here. There's another really good video that we posted yesterday on the food situation inside of Wuhan. You should take a look at that. It's a pretty good look at normal versus Wuhan now on lockdown. That's all we have. Thank you.